Hello, thank you for tuning in to this 2023 Primary Election Candidate Forum for the Port of Olympia, Districts 4 and 5. This forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County in collaboration with Thurston Community Media. The League of Women Voters is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates of political parties at any level of government. But we are always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public to defend our democracy and empower voters. I am Allyson Brooks from the League, and I will be moderating this forum. Shelley Knepp will be our timer. This forum combines the two newly formed commissioner districts of the Port of Olympia. There are 6 candidates participating in this forum. The candidates in this race for District 4 are Maggie Sanders, Bill Moomau, Joanna Manson, and Rose Chiu Gunderson. The participating candidates for District 5 are Troy Kirby and Sarah Tonge. All candidates were invited. Nick Adams informed us that he has suspended his campaign and will not be participating. Martin McElliott did not respond to our invitation and follow-up calls. We stress the importance of civility in our forums. Candidates, you have each received the ground rules for the forum and agree to abide by them. For this forum, each candidate will have the opportunity to answer a series of questions in reverse alphabetical order, and the questions will be alternated so that each has the chance to start first. You will also be able to give a 1-minute closing statement. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. If you need me to repeat the question, don't hesitate to ask. The timer will turn yellow when you have 15 seconds left, and then will show a stop sign when your time is up. If you don't notice the sign, I will tell you when your time is up. For the first question, I will begin with Sarah Tonge. Question 1, what makes you the most qualified candidate for this position?
Yes, I would say my leadership qualities and ability to work well with other people. Throughout my experience and my jobs, I have a knack for working with all types of people, difficult people, people who have not been successful in the positions before. I'm able to help ask the right questions, collaborate with people, and bring that skill to the table. And I think at the Port that's very important in the environment that we're in. And I also bring my technology and leadership experience to the Port Commission, and that will help bring just new innovations and new thoughts to the Port Commission that we haven't had before. I also bring a fresh democratic perspective. I am against big corporate interests, money in politics, and special interests. It's very important to me that our community and our environment come first. Many of the decisions that I've seen within the Port in the last several years have not put our community and our environment first, and that I need to get involved.
Thank you, Sarah. Maggie Sanders, what makes you the most qualified candidate for this position?
As commissioner, I would bring commitment to environmental and social justice and equity and inclusion, playing an active role in supporting and enhancing the businesses and communities of our beautiful region. My career has continually prioritized work that supports social equity and the environment and equal access to opportunities from employment to contracting to the environment and protection of social and environmental justice measures to empower and provide evolution to the next chapter of representation, participation, and a collective partnership through all organizations of leadership, including local, state, federal, tribal, and national priorities. All people that live in the state of Washington have a responsibility as community members to take actions and policies which make big, major decisions that impact our life, and all voices lead to a greater transparency and inclusivity and equity in better decision making.
Thank you. Bill Moomau, you are next.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for presenting this presentation, and to the citizens of Thurston County. I have lived in Thurston County for 40 years. I have seen this motion picture before. As far as my experience, I have served in the Army for 3 years. I served in Vietnam for a construction company. I was office manager of marine operations. We operated 2 dry docks and 11 T2 tankers, which are used to generate electricity ashore. So I have some marine experience. I also worked for Northern Pacific Railroad, which gave me transportation experience in passengers and freight. I later worked for the Department of Labor and Industries for 30 years and was supervisor of employer services. I supervised 40 people. We had 5,000 employer accounts and $1 billion in insurance premiums.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Joanne.
Hi, thank you again to the League of Women Voters for this forum and the opportunity to present my experience. So I have been trained as and educated as a professional community planner. In my experience, I have a lot of experience communicating, considering, researching, and recommending and integrating many facets of how various populations from counties level, cities, regions. I've worked for regional government, and I've worked for state government, and most recently and currently the federal government. So as a community planner, my goal is to ensure that all of the populations have consideration in terms of developments that impact their lands, their airspace, and their waters, and the health and safety of our natural infrastructure. As I plan to be a longtime resident here, and I am planning on eventually retiring here, I would like to bring my experience to engage as your Port Commissioner on the policy side to provide considerate direction to balanced decision-making that is inclusive and benefits all residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. And next we have Troy.
Hi, my name's Troy Kirby. I'm running for Port Commissioner District 5, and the reason I believe that I'm suited for this position is that I've actually served on community boards prior. I served as a Lacey Parks Commissioner for 7 years in the largest park system in our county, and a lot of that is hearing out your neighbors, having the neighbors' concerns be heard. It doesn't always mean listened to, but it does mean heard. A lot of times, one of the issues that we have at the port happens to be they only have 3 commissioners, not 5. I think this is a great expansion opportunity. It means that we can actually have port commissioners talking one-on-one, resolving issues, as well as dealing more with the community and involving more taxpayer transparency for what goes on at the port. It's not just a marine terminal or an airport, it's a lot of property. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, Troy. Rose.
Thank you. My primary thing is about my experience. I've been here for 24 years raising my kids. I've done community economic and social development for 13 years. Whether it's I have been a successful entrepreneur, and whether it's a small business or nonprofit to combat human trafficking. I've proven myself to be a collaborative leader. I'm a dedicated community advocate, and I have bipartisan policy accomplishment on human trafficking legislation. Because of that, that's why many leaders in the community has endorsed me from both sides of the aisle. I know what it's like to govern as on the board, and that's what a commissioner will do. I also am a manager and executive, and I have all the management experience that's needed to understand how to work with the executive of the port. And that's what I'm saying is the experience that counts. It's the relationship, it's the proven leadership that I bring to make this a success.
Thank you, Rose. For the second question, we will begin with Maggie Sanders. Maggie, question 2. How can the port bring more economic development to Thurston County while balancing climate and environmental demands?
Yes, I feel this is extremely important for the port to consider. I feel that real progress is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our communities. It's an ongoing, urgent priority. Local governments, given the seriousness of climate change, I feel that I can lead in regulating utilities and expand clean energy sources, as well as innovative business practices and decisions that are inclusive in the climate crisis, as well as clean energy resources, engaging tenants and business owners, land quality, waste management, zero waste plan, waste prevention, and restoring wildlife and hazardous mitigation to the wildlife of the port. I also would like to give back because elected leaders have the duty to create and expand programs, dismantling the existing systemic barriers to alleviate poverty and enable everyone to enjoy dignified lives.
Thank you, Maggie. Question 2, the next is for Bill. Do you need me to repeat the question, or are you good?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I think the issues of climate are obviously a very important issue, and particularly the question of sea rise as it affects the port and as it affects the city of Olympia. I think the concerns over climate and so forth do not take away from the issues of the economic developments that should be done by the port. And unfortunately, the port has spent a lot of money on a port that is located at the end of Puget Sound and is not a sustainable operation.
Thank you, Bill. Next we have Joanna.
Can you repeat the question?
I will repeat the question, no problem. How can the port bring more economic development to Thurston County while balancing climate and environmental demands?
Okay, thank you. So I think that the port can best promote economic development in Thurston County in an environmentally sustainable way that helps to improve the lives of all residents by ensuring that there's considerate deliberation on the types of developments that are allowed on its land and whether or not those are beneficial, the most beneficial to the residents here in Thurston County. The port does not operate in a vacuum. It resides in a county that has 10 cities, 11 jurisdictions that each have unique environmental and socioeconomic conditions and whose boundaries traverse 4 different watersheds that are divided into 5 distinct water resource inventory areas to ensure water use is sustainable and the water resources of our area is maintained for the health and livelihood of all residents. These conditions and ecosystems must be taken into consideration by the port and appropriate conditions applied to its proposed and considered developments on its lands and waters.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, we have Troy.
You know, the port is more than just a marine terminal. It's more than just an airport, and it's more than just real estate holdings, but it does set the tone for the entire county. It's over $1.5 billion of economic value each year. The thing about the port is we set the tone. So we set the tone in several ways, whether it's rising sea level, whether it's economic development, through a lot of great living wage union jobs. And that is one of the things that gets missed as we talk in the abstract, is that not only longshoremen, but also with the Swire Coca-Cola deal, you are going to see living wage union jobs that actually set the tone for those wonderful warehouses that are over in Hawkesbury that don't go unionized and don't worry about safety standards in the same breath as we do. And that to me is where we set the tone, whether it comes from jobs, whether it comes from innovation of economics, or whether it comes from ecological innovation as well.
Thank you, Troy. Rose.
Hi. The theme of my campaign is about economic and social development. I have a history of working to support people, caring about social cause. But I also have a history of being successful in the business realm. So balancing the two would be what I bring to this position. Currently, the latest financial results showing from the port shows that 72% of their expenses, non-operating expenses, go toward protecting the environment. And that's the trend that I'm going to make sure it's going to sustain and grow from there. But also it's important that we care about the people and the balancing of what the people's needs are. During the pandemic, the port is able to provide an alternative to container ship and bringing more ships to bring the supply chains that were so badly needed for the people of Thurston County to get the products we need to keep living. And that's the role of the port. That's the economic development. We provide an alternative to big port. It's a strategic port that is vital to support the people of Thurston County. We will balance both, and I will make sure that we will continue to grow in the environmental protection,
Thank you, Rose.
Clean up, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Next, final answer, Sarah.
Great. Yeah, so when it comes to the balance between economic development and the environment, I'm fully in the environmental camp, and I do understand that the port already spends a lot of the funds on the environment. So first we need to look at what we are doing to create that need for us to spend so much money to protect the environment. What industries are causing that? And what can we do to still keep those jobs and create more union jobs, but stop some of the industries like hauling larger logs and switch to maybe things like break bulk products or technology industries, things that are not so harmful for the environment, such as hauling logs. We also have just many opportunities for more jobs out at the warehouses. We can create more jobs in other industries as we transition from logs and things that are not good for the environment.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we're going to move on to the third question. For the third question, I will begin with Bill Moomau. Question 3. What are your views on the port's revenue sources, expenses, and overall budget? Bill?
I don't think that it's necessary for the port to expand its budget, considering that we have a debt at the present time of somewhere around $33 million. The port is involved in activities that are not sustainable, such as the marine operations. We get only ships that haul logs for Weyerhaeuser, which is a $22 billion corporation, which knew that it was making a great deal with the port, and it continues there. I frankly want to discontinue the marine operations, and there are other things that we can do with that land that will benefit all of the citizens of Thurston County.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Joanna.
Thank you. So as Port Commissioner, I feel it's the role to look at policies that are in place now for the port's real estate holdings and their lines of businesses. In general, revenue from land holdings should cover the costs for maintaining them, as well as pay down debt on them at a rate that would allow for generation of revenue years before the end of the period of use of that land. A longer-term lease may take longer to realize that needed public benefit revenue generation, giving a leaseholder a longer time to pay at lower rates. This is where shorter-term leases with options to renew are more favorable to allow the port to raise rates accordingly to achieve public benefits. The balance of capital projects in the port's lines of business needs to be looked at. And in my experience, I'm uniquely positioned to do that as a professional community planner. And so that would be my findings.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, we have Troy.
One of the issues that constantly gets brought up by any critic is that the marine terminal doesn't make money. It actually does. It's based off of a balance sheet issue of depreciation and how that's calculated. Depreciation of equipment goes against anything that you make. But the problem with that is we could show that in the black tomorrow. But if we do that, that also means that we're going to go deferred maintenance, which is dangerous to anybody that works down there once you don't fix a crane, and it costs twice as much once you decide to finally replace that equipment. I mean, if really it's the marine terminal needs to make money, we can hire 4 more sales agents and have them have 70 more boats in the water at a certain time. That's not what the criticism is about. The criticism is usually focused on the fact that we accept equipment that people don't care for, and that we don't really have a plan for saying that we don't want to accept certain equipment like oil sands equipment that does not jive or work within the tone of what our community wants to have representative of it when it accepts stuff from the marine terminal.
Thank you, Troy. Rose, you're next.
Thank you. I have a long history of financial management background, building businesses, and I understand financial balance sheets. And Troy said it right. It is true that we need to invest into the equipment to protect our workers, to protect our region, the livelihood of people here, and that it's important to look at. But it's also important that we look at how we can collaborate with the federal government and state government to secure grants and funds to continue to butt inlet restoration and cleanup. And all the environmental projects like the estuarium that is so needed for the youth here. And all those are really about economic development. Youth is our next generation. So I would support balancing the budget, but also long-term investment through collaboration to secure state and federal funds to make our port the premier economic development port.
Thank you, Rose. Sarah, you are next.
So when it comes to balancing the budget at the port, what's really important when we're taking in $5 million of taxpayer money every year is that the port is self-sustaining and generating benefit for the community. From what I've seen, that's not currently happening. While our equipment does lose money, and that is a balance item on our sheet, we will have to pay for that maintenance at some point to protect our workers. So we need to switch to industries that are more robust and less environmentally impactful. And we have options. Moving away from logs and towards the Vision 2050 for the waterfront is where we need to go, where we will have a sustainable waterfront that can be enjoyed by families and also continue economic development. We can continue, but we need to fix our current losses and the hemorrhage of money that's happening there.
Thank you, Sarah. And finally, we have Maggie Sanders.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I can. What are your views on the port's revenue sources, expenses, and overall budget?
I feel that the local governments have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer dollars and to spend them wisely. I feel that the port could diversify their economy by including the agriculture. The Department of Agriculture, Thurston County lost 75% of their farmlands. They could use our assistance in importing and exporting. There could also be very many innovative ways to expand the port's business to include sustainable green energy, wind energy, climate change, solar, as well as workforce development and enhancing the current businesses that they have and investing in their current infrastructure and ensuring that any and all new infrastructure that is built is done in a green, sustainable way, giving back to the community. We all enjoy the air, land, and water that connects us all, and we breathe the same air, and we should all enjoy the same benefits as a community.
Thank you, Maggie. And now we turn to the fourth question, and we will be starting with Joanna Manchin. And please, everybody, remember, you each have 1 minute to answer the question. Question 4. What specific considerations do you think the port should include in its negotiations with the City of Tumwater for a development agreement for the Panatone development lease option? And we're starting with Joanna.
Okay, thank you. I've heard about the Panatone lease agreement. I have not read it specifically, and I think that as a community planner, some of the considerations that I would give to that development is, number one, looking at the term of the length of the lease and ensuring that a market rate fee is secured for that lease. I think the other key elements are making sure that the development is not disruptive to the environment, specifically water resources that it would require. Also, transportation networks, impacts to that transportation networks, and also the benefits other than the lease that it is providing to the community in terms of jobs and/or recreational or open space opportunities.
Thank you, Joanna. Next, we have Troy.
So with this, it is not an actual lease. It's an option, a 10-year option, and then it can expand if they choose to collect on it to go to a 55-year lease. The difference is that there are roads through that area already. It was already zoned for stuff, but majority of the time, nobody thought anybody wanted it because of the FAA rules. That's been changed a little bit, but this is really the city of Tumwater also agreeing that they would not change their zoning for the next few years during that option. The thing is, you know, with the city of Tumwater, they do have to have some ability to have self-determination, even if we have property within their boundaries. We can't just landlock folks and then tell them they can't ever, you know, develop on, you know, their property as they try to expand their city. But again, we don't even know what the Panattoni Group would even put on that land, specifically because, you know, in the next 10 years, retail may be something totally different. The reason they haven't jumped on that actual option and lease is because credit markets are frozen. They don't actually know whether or not they're going to, you know, do anything at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Troy. Rose, you are next.
Thank you. Well, the whole plan is subject to the Habitat Conservation Plan before it can go forward. And the city of Tumwater, there's a lot of advantage to have Panattoni there. I live in that right in around there. I understand the change of the environment, but it's also important to provide the tax base to support the firemen, to support the schools, to support all that area. And I think it will do good to the city of Tumwater because they will get more. There's a trade to get recreation, to build a recreation center through this development, which is a desperate need for the people in the region we represent, for the city of Tumwater, for the youth. And so all these considerations together, I believe if we can put it all together, it will be a benefit to the city of Tumwater and to the people of District 4.
Thank you, Rose. Sarah, you are next.
Yes. So it's very important when we are dealing with any large corporations such as Panattoni that we are putting the needs of community members and the environment first. And that includes checking the market rate of the lease and making sure, or the option, and making sure that it is in line with what we would charge others, like the Capital City Little League that is also leasing land out there, making sure that it's fair for everyone. And we also need to make sure that the environment comes first. We've developed so much, and our water table is at such a critical point. We need to be very careful. And sometimes the people, I think, who are telling us that these things are okay, sometimes later realize that maybe it wasn't okay. Maybe it did mess up the environment. Too bad. That's a little late for the money. So I think we really just need to be aware of the long-term decisions that are happening. If it's an option, nothing's being built there now. But when something is, we need to go farther than the habitat conservation plans that are made and really look into the environmental repercussions.
Thank you, Sarah. Next we have Maggie.
Could you repeat the question?
I will repeat the question. What specific considerations do you think the port should include in its negotiations with the city of Tumwater for a development agreement for the Panattoni development lease option?
It's my understanding that the port attempted and was really trying to make this lease go through, and there were 38 pages of public testimony that in concerns in regards to the environment and the impacts that this manufacturing industry would be providing in the city of Tumwater. And the main source of water to fund this industrial corporation will be coming from Tumwater. And it's my understanding that there is not a interlocal agreement right now, and that it's extremely important that we look to the community of Tumwater and listen to the voices of Tumwater and keep our industries local and supporting our local economy. And that even though there is a local agreement, that we need to consider commercial leases in fair market value that are sustainable and voices to the community.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Last minute is with Bill.
Thank you. In listening or reading about the Panattoni agreement, I think a large issue was the forestation, the trees that were involved. And I kind of wonder why Tumwater City or the Parks and Recreation Department there didn't make an issue of whether they could use or would use those trees for a park or some benefit to the city of Tumwater. I'm not aware of all the deals that the port has made in relationship to the Panattoni contract, but the big question in my mind is, where is the water coming from?
Thank you. Okay, so for the fifth question, we're going to be starting with Troy Kirby. Question 5. What do you think the role of the port should be in the planned removal of the Fifth Avenue Dam and the conversion of Capitol Lake into an estuary? Well, we are starting with Troy.
Well, first of all, this plan is 2033. The legislature's already put some money forward on really the study and moving forward. I actually think that this helps set the tone for converting not only to an estuary, but also when you talk about environmental concerns like rising sea level, and I get to see rising sea level for my business downtown. It was only a few blocks away from the wonderful rising sea level this last winter. You do see the evidence, but you do see the clock ticking. And that actually helps provide some coverage for, hey, we have to look at different ways that we're going to do things, because heavy vessels may not be able to go through the port in the same way, or the port marina, in about 10 years. And I think that there are some benefits that come from this. I learned to swim in Capitol Lake, so I'm excited about the opportunity of not having a full silt lake that just sits there with a bunch of sediment.
Thank you, Troy. Next we have Rose.
The port has the current port commission is supportive of that project, and I'm personally supportive of it moving forward to a natural state. There is the order of things need to be coordinated well, because the removal of the dam cannot precede the cleanup of Bud Inlet, because the silt will continue to go into the polluted water. So it's important that there's an order of things and good coordination. Otherwise, if the silt goes down to the Bud Inlet, when it hasn't been cleaned up, the Army Corps of Engineers will not continue to dredge. So that coordination, the collaboration is vital, and I'm in full support of it.
Thank you, Rose. And next we have Sarah.
Great. Yes, the port should continue to be supportive of this plan to remove the Fifth Avenue Bridge and dam and build a new bridge and restore the natural landscape down past Bud Inlet. Of course, Bud Inlet does need to be cleaned up first. Those restoration efforts need to happen. But once that happens and we can restore the natural efforts, build the new bridge, from there we will need to follow the Vision 2050 waterfront for the downtown waterfront and continue economic development, but also expand recreation opportunities down there and continue to just protect the environment.
Thank you, Sarah. And Maggie, you are next.
I support wholeheartedly the removal of the dam and the restoration of the habitat of Bud Inlet, as well as the Deschutes River. And I feel that it's very imperative to protect the species and habitat in this community, and that I've listened to communities' concerns in regards to the environment and supporting local sustainable businesses after the removal, as well as waterfront destinations and securing habitat within not just 50 feet of the water front, but extending it out to 250 feet so that we can protect the species in the area. And I really appreciate that they're going to be moving forward with this, and I would like the port industry to explore new opportunities to support local women-owned businesses and disadvantaged businesses to be included in this new opportunity.
Thank you, Maggie. Bill.
Thank you. Well, the port is obviously going to have a very major function to coordinate and collaborate with other agencies in this endeavor. It's obviously going to happen. The Deschutes River is going to send more fill into Bud Inlet, And so consequently, that's another reason why I think the marine operations needs to be terminated, because they currently have to dredge from time to time for the ports, for the large ships to come in. And those ships are only logging ships, and once or twice a year, a cow ship. So I think it's just ridiculous that we continue to spend money on the port operations that are unsustainable.
Thank you, Bill. And finally, Joanna.
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
I can repeat the question. Question 5 is, what do you think the role of the port should be in the planned removal of the Fifth Avenue Dam and the conversion of Capitol Lake into an estuary?
Thank you. So the port is an integral partner, I think, and player in this project. But as has been previously mentioned, there are many other entities, the state and other environmental agencies that have to be coordinated with. So obviously, the port needs to continue their collaboration with these entities. I have extensive experience in researching and requesting the expertise of specialists from engineers, water quality, hydrologists, and economists to help inform potential alternatives and solutions to best sustain such a line of business if it's determined in the best interest of the community. So with respect to removal of the Fifth Street Dam and the ongoing marine terminal operation, alternatives will have to be looked at, much the way that we all saw alternatives explored with very nice graphics around Capitol Lake for this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. And finally, our sixth and final question will start with Rose Chiu Gunderson. Rose, what are your views on the proposed expansion of Olympia Regional Airport in Tumwater? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I live 3 miles from the airport. There is no current plan to expand the airport that I know of. The modernization plan is really a different way of, it's not the same as expansion. I've attended meetings and I know it's not. So the Olympia Regional Airport is a great place to continue commercial air cargo, to continue to support emergency services for our state patrol, for our medical emergency. It's vital to the community, to the people of Thurston County. Do I support expansion? No, I do not support expansion. I would work with the airport operations to try to reduce the hours of disturbance to the community also, to see if that could work it out so that the people in my district will have a little bit of balance with the noise.
Thank you, Rose.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Next, we have Sarah.
Yes, so at this time, there aren't any current plans to expand the airport, and I don't see any real need to expand the airport. I haven't read anything or heard anything that's a solid proposal that would help the community and help the taxpayers. But we do need to keep the airport for emergency services. The current operations are fairly successful, not losing a ton of money. It's the most balanced budget part of the port, so we do need to continue operations there. And I would be interested to see how we could move towards more renewable options at our airport there. There are alternative airport fuels, alternative electric planes that are coming about, just different technologies that can be used to quiet the airport and also make a bigger, or improve economic, or the environmental issues that airports all have.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, we have Maggie.
Yes, as a environmental justice NASA ambassador on human health, air quality, and applied sciences, and serving the 271 tribes of Washington Region 10 on a National Tribal Air Association committee member, bringing air quality priority issues to the federal government, I feel that no, there should not be an expansion on the airport, and that we should look into the current infrastructure and maybe enhancing it and developing it into being more sustainable and providing infrastructure to support that. Last month, the military released a statement that indicating that new commercial airport built near Joint Base Lewis McChord would have an impact on the military's aviation operations. And to date, no government on a local level, sovereign council, or level of support these greenfield sites. There is no government support, zero sovereign. The universal message is no, not here.
Thank you, Maggie. Next we have Bill.
Thank you. Well, I definitely support the continued operation of the airport. It is one of the few operations of the port that is nominally profitable. The program is a modernization program, which I think all of us would be agreeable to supporting. And I have a house that is about a mile away from the airport. There's always noise. There are always people who are complaining about noise. But we live in this century that is a very modernistic and a century where you're going to have to tolerate noise. Electric airplanes will be great. And I would like to see electric airplanes come to America and come to the world. So I support the airport, but not any major expansion.
Thank you, Bill. Joanna.
Yes, thank you. So my experience currently is working as a federal community planner for the DOT, so I'm very familiar with airports and their plans, and my current understanding is that an airport master plan update is currently underway, and the port is going to be reviewing that this year, but hopefully I'm not finalizing it until I'm able to represent you in the District 4 on the port. And that preferred future airport layout plan has been identified in the current draft. So the question of expansion is not proposed in that current draft. The modernization of the airport is important, and the airport does provide critical services to the community with respect to emergency response and fire suppression and cargo and supplies, and et cetera. However, modernization is important, and the infrastructure on the airport needs to be looked at with respect to providing for electric aircraft and alternative fuels.
Thank you, Joanna. Next we have Troy.
While it's great to talk about expansion and all these things, I don't think that there's a mega airport expansion coming. I think that has been quashed and killed by basically every legislator. Nobody wants that. And the modernization sounds great. Here's the problem with it. We actually have staff retirements that are going to come up, especially from the top of the heap at the airport. So it's really important that as the port commissioner and the port commission, that they start doing real searches for those people that are actually going to see what we want the airport to be in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. It's not just settled because of one person right now, because they might not be there in 6 months or 2 years.
Thank you. And now each of you will have 1 minute for a closing statement. That is 1 minute. And we are going to start with Sarah Tonge. Sarah, you have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters for having the forum and having us today. I'm running to represent you because I will fight and serve for the people to protect the environment and community interests first. And within our port, I think that's really important. I will bring my experience and leadership and hard work to learn all I can about these important, critical plans and make the best decisions by listening to community members, experts, and really just learning and involving all voices in all decisions I make.
Thank you, Sarah. Maggie, you have 1 minute.
We live in a region of great beauty and immense biological diversity. We must protect the well-being present and future generations unquestionably depend on the protection and restoration of our interconnected natural systems. And that includes business practices that affect our environment and the community that we're elected to serve. I want to be the collective voice of the community and listen to you and your concerns in regards to the port's business affairs, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. working in partnership at local level, regional, with the Department of Ecology, with the EPA, with the community, enhancing our current businesses and providing diversity, equity, and inclusion and transparency in government contracting, giving living wage, family working wage jobs that support our economy and keeping our port healthy for all.
Thank you, Maggie. Bill, now you have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Thank you. Well, I support the airport operations, the new market warehousing areas and so forth, but I want to close the marine operations as an unsustainable operation. We can sell the cranes, we can sell the warehouses in Lacey to pay down some of our debt, and then at the port, I want to use the land that's on the water for the development of condos and high-end apartments. I want to take the warehouse and make some kind of arrangement with the city of Olympia to convert it into homeless housing, and then I don't want to continue the contract with Weyerhaeuser, which ends at the end of this year. That's 60 acres of land that can be used for community developments and 15 acres for a little league park.
Thank you, Bill. Joanna, 1 minute for a closing statement.
According to the 2009 Economic Impact Study, the Port of Olympia activities generated $350 million plus in wages, salaries, and local consumption to the local and regional economy. The port also has miles of trails and open space and parks along its waterfronts that the people of Thurston County enjoy. They also host various public markets, festivals, cultural events, and public art displays for the health and enjoyment of the populace. I have enjoyed these offerings along the Port of Olympia, and these are some of the reasons I became interested in serving as a port commissioner. But also as a community planner, I think it will be an exciting opportunity for me to serve the community with my skill set on the policy side of decision making versus on the research and informing the elected officials. As I have done with my experience. So I appreciate your support and vote for the best representation for District 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Troy, now for your 1 minute closing statement.
So what you've heard is a variety of viewpoints, but all made in a civil discussion. I can appreciate that. I think it's one of the beauties of being in Thurston County is that we find consensus and we set the tone for the rest of the region. Honestly, I think that if you look at it, we're all neighbors. And neighbors allow neighbors to be heard. Doesn't always mean listened to, but heard. And I think that is where we need to go as a port with these 2 new positions and with expanding the Port Commission in general. Having 5 commissioners, I think, is an advantage because we will actually kind of mediate some of the problems that we've seen down at the port in the past and actually resolve to a better solution that reflects the community values. Thank you.
Okay, and final minute closing statement. Rose.
Thank you for the opportunity. I bring the experience that's needed to accomplish what we need to do for the people of Thurston County. I want to make Thurston County a destination for thriving living that includes play, well-paying jobs, recreation, and environment. My priorities will be to do inclusion through community engagement and conversations that includes diverse perspectives so that we can reach an agreement on how to move forward with the management and the direction of the port. I want a waterfront destination so that people can enjoy and make it accessible to all. And with my human trafficking background, we know that at every port entry, there's a potential vulnerable points for traffickers to exploit. And we need to, I'm gonna advance training to identify vulnerabilities, not only in our area, but collaborate with other ports statewide. That's what Port of Seattle has done, and I want to bring it to Thurston County.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. And thank you, Sarah Tonge, Maggie Sanders, Bill Moomau, Joanna Manchin, Troy Kirby, and Rose Chiu Gunderson for participating in this forum. We thank TCMedia for producing and airing it. We encourage our viewers to be a voter in the primary election beginning July 14th through primary election day, August 1st, 2023. Thank you for joining us today, and we appreciated you viewing our program.